Have you ever walked into a room full of people and felt the mood was off? Or when you were making a decision, you just went with your gut? Have you ever had a sudden insight or pictured something in your mind, something you were working on before it physically materialized? Have you ever just known or had a hunch about something, and then that's what's happened? Of course you have. We all have. These are common ways we use to describe how we perceive our intuition or psychic awareness and the awareness of other people's energy, including feelings and thoughts. For now, let's call this awareness or nonverbal communication extrasensory perception. And believe it or not, we are all psychic. You have amazing and unique talents, and your psychic gifts are a key part of these. And we all use this extrasensory perception to guide our decision-making every day. Hello, my name is Vicky McGrath. I'm a 52-year-old wife, mom, business owner, and psychic medium in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And after a lifetime of being different, I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum at 50 years old. At this point, you may be asking yourself, what on earth does having autism have to do with being psychic? Well, you may or may not know that autism is characterized by challenges with communication, among other things, including difficulty communicating in a typical way with others. After years of getting information through pictures in my mind, feeling things in my gut, and just knowing information as words entered my mind, I came to understand that other people don't rely on this method of communication as much as I do. In a world where communication is only considered normal through the physical senses, extrasensory perception and communication is not widely understood or accepted. We can all identify many examples of extrasensory perception in nature if we gave it some thought. Bees dance to communicate food supplies to the hive. Bats use echolocation to find food in flight. Ants use chemical secretions. Whales use sonar to identify food and obstacles. Extrasensory perception is a commonly understood phenomenon in the natural world. So why is it that we have come to believe that humans do not communicate through extrasensory perception? I hope that by the time I'm finished with my talk, you'll feel inspired by the idea that you have psychic gifts, that you'll see that other people with autism are using their psychic gifts to communicate with the world, maybe more than typical people, and come to value psychic gifts as a valid aspect of communication. But first, let me ask you, do you know that child? The one no one's parents wants to invite to birthday parties, the one who doesn't get invited back after the first play date, the one having an inconsolable meltdown in the toy store? Well, it turns out I was that child. When I would ask my mom why I wasn't invited to birthdays or friends to play, she would tell me their parents didn't like my leadership qualities. What I believe now was that I perceived and communicated in ways that were frightening to the parents. They didn't like that I felt or knew something about circumstances or people that I couldn't explain, and they couldn't verify through their physical senses. My extrasensory perception challenged their authority because I was certain that my knowledge was correct. In many cases, people on the spectrum are co-diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder because they disagree with the information they are expected to assume is correct. I believe now that rather than being defiant, we are certain about our knowledge, but evidence as to why we know or how we know cannot be proven to others, including the adults in our lives. How many times have we heard a parent or elder say to a child, "Because I said so," or "Because I'm your mother," to overrule the child's certainty? The truth is, I never understood why I was different. In fact, as I grew up and into a teenager and adult, I considered myself smart, talented, and independent, despite getting mediocre grades in school. School was difficult for me. I was unable to manage the sensory bombardment of my own extrasensory perception. The other students' energy, the noise, the lights, the need to sit still and in one place during class. In addition, I was unable to determine how to appropriately convey my ideas to the teachers when they were coming through as psychic downloads. I'm not sure how you found school. However, for me, it was a world of restraining rules, memorization, and testing of knowledge that had little meaning and didn't actually come intuitive to me. Spontaneity was curbed, curiosity unwelcome, and interaction with others in the classroom was tightly controlled. Somehow, I graduated high school, went to university, completed an undergraduate degree and a master's degree, and throughout my career, I found it challenging to get along with coworkers and understand workplace hierarchy and social etiquette. In addition, it was difficult to explain to colleagues and supervisors a future vision or outcome of a project when I was the only one who could see the completed picture in my mind, and I couldn't explain how the vision was developed or how it would be implemented. After losing 2 well-paid management jobs within a decade, I concluded there was something wrong with me and began to struggle with anxiety and depression. This ultimately led to me being diagnosed on the autism spectrum in 2019 at 50 years old. In fact, now that I've had some time to process the diagnosis and understand the challenges I experienced throughout my life, what I've come to realize is that my extrasensory perception was actually psychic abilities. I decided to see if I could use these psychic abilities in a dedicated way. I took mediumship classes and practiced readings for others, both connecting with their loved ones who had passed and life purpose readings to help guide people in their current lives. I wanted to see if my extrasensory perception could be strengthened and channeled into something that contributed to others' lives. I now provide these readings professionally for people, specializing in working with others on the spectrum. So I thought it might be helpful to look at how the major psychic gifts I have worked with affect me throughout my life and see if they also resonate with you. After all, you are also talented and gifted with extrasensory perception, and you may find yourself using these gifts without actually knowing it. There are 4 main ways I receive communication or perception, known in psychic circles as the 4 clairs: clairaudience, hearing voices; clairvoyance, seeing images; clairsentience, knowing from a feeling; and claircognizance, instantly knowing. Clairaudient messages sound like someone talking in my mind. This voice is always calm and straightforward, such as 3 to 5 years. Clairaudience is most present during decisions in my life. If you ask a question of your heart and hear the answer, this is clairaudience. Clairvoyant messages literally pop into my mind as an image, like a photograph or scene in my mind. When I'm offering a reading as a medium for a client wishing to hear from a past loved one, for example, I will clearly see in full color the spirit person that has come forward for the client, like someone is showing me a photograph. If it's a grandmother, I can see clearly the white hair is braided a certain way and the floral dress is multicolored with lots of bright colors. Clairvoyance is also how Temple Grandin, possibly the most famous person on the spectrum, perceives information. She sees information in pictures and then puts pictures together to build a coherent message. I have spoken at a national autism conference in Canada, and one of the speakers talked about how he sees each note when he listens to music. This is another example of clairvoyance. Clairsentient messages come through as a feeling. Clairsentience is the most common form of the 4 clairs, and you probably experienced this clair yourself without thinking too much about it. Gut instincts, being able to read the emotions of others, sensing the collective energy of a room all fall under clairsentience. When providing a mediumship reading, I will often feel others' ailments or injuries. For example, my arm will feel a pop if the person I'm reading has had a fracture, or a sensation will run through my stomach if digestion is an issue for them. My throat will often feel tight briefly if someone is unable to express themselves or if they have something important to say. You could try experimenting with this yourself. Whenever you get a strong, intuitive feeling about something, write it down in a journal. Over the next weeks or months, you'll realize how many clairsentient messages you receive. By recognizing these messages, it will help you pick up on more of them. Suddenly knowing something out of the blue is called claircognizance. You know the insight to be true, even though you haven't been told, seen, or heard the information. It's when our brains get an immediate download from our intuition, just like when you download a large amount of information into your computer's hard drive. Although, when it happens to a human brain, the download occurs within a few seconds. A recent example of this for me was the Super Bowl. My husband was watching the football game, and it was almost halftime, and I said, "Oh, the Bucks are going to win." And he said, "That would be a major upset. The other team is the favorite." The Bucks won. Now, I didn't know before that moment who was going to win, so there's no way I can bet on these things. I get these all the time, and most of the time, I don't know if the information is related to me or if it's just random communication in the psychic field. And most times, when it's random, it's not organized in any way that I can use it to be helpful. Now, getting back to my point, even after the diagnosis, I knew that being on the spectrum was not the only reason for my difference in society. After extensive research into the characteristics of autism, I realized that the reason was actually because of my psychic abilities. There is, surprisingly, a fair amount of research indicating that people with autism have highly developed psychic gifts. One research article suggested that as many as 95% of individuals on the autism spectrum have unusual sensory or perceptual experiences. Another research paper includes evidence which suggests that the majority of individuals on the spectrum demonstrate some form of atypical sensory behavior. At last, this made sense. I could never understand why other people didn't hear the sounds I heard, smell things as intensely, have a feeling or the knowing I had deep inside about the world. I now believe that people with autism use psychic communication to a larger extent than typical, and this could help others on the spectrum and their families or caregivers come to understand, appreciate, and fulfill their unique place and role in the world. Of course, this is all my own perspective and experience. I have only had the diagnosis of being on the spectrum for 2 years, but I can honestly say I've used my psychic gifts throughout my life, even when I didn't know that's what I was doing. And now I can see that these gifts were supporting me along the way, helping me better communicate in the world where I didn't perceive things in the same way as other people. I can also say from my own research and participation in the autism community that others on the spectrum communicate their extrasensory perception through describing things like seeing music or tasting colors. In conclusion, I hope my experience conveys the value of being open to different ways of communicating, ideas, and the benefits of seeing that all people have psychic gifts available to them to enhance their understanding of the world. It's my opinion, and there's research to support this, that people with autism use their psychic gifts to a much larger extent than typical as a way to communicate. I hope that you feel inspired to look at your own psychic gifts and how you have benefited from them throughout your life. And when you have a hunch about something, go ahead and trust your gut. It's probably trying to tell you something important. Thank you for your time today. I really enjoyed being here.